Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jesse,
And I'm Ruben.
and welcome again to the Hidden Health Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for jumping in and listening to what we got going on here. For those of you who don't know and who haven't already been following along, this is Spartan Journals. Ruben and I are preparing for a Spartan half marathon as well as an obstacle course race. Coming in February, we're really getting nearer and nearer every day. The training is getting more and more intense, and so it's exciting times. We've been recording this already for a few months, so you can go back and check out the initial episodes and follow along the journey. But boy, we're just kicking ass here, you know. So it's been a good time, Ruben. Won't you tell the people how the last few weeks have been for you?
Yeah, man. Based on like our last conversation, I know I talked about like living in a new space, like the air is better. So like my runs, I feel myself getting stronger. I like being in clean air. It's always a good thing to wake up, look at the weather, and you see your air quality index is good or great, or whatever it is. Um, but it's definitely starting to pick up, dude. Like having like there's no more 2 mile days. it's like it's like okay, I wake up, I look at the calendar that we have, the training calendar. It's like, all right, I have 3 miles today, I have 4 miles today. This week it's gonna be my first 5 miles. So I'm like, all right, it's really starting to pick up, which means it's taking actually even more time. Um, so what I've been doing is I've been waking up earlier and actually doing it in the morning because like my days for some reason the last few days have been very busy. So I've been doing everything in the morning. It's nice. It's like really cold. So it's like I think when we our training day in San Jose in February, it's pretty chilly. So I'm like, okay, this is a different ball game based on when we started training, it was like really hot over here. So I would train in the heat. I'm like sweating, I'm dying. And now I'm like adjusting to this colder weather, especially in the mornings, like 55 degrees. So I'm expecting that our race will be around 55 to 65 degrees since it's February in San Jose, which is that's usually the weather, especially up in the mountains. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, so it's been that I found a nice, beautiful trail that I get to, I'm running with wildlife nearby. So it's just like a lot of, it just keeps you busy because it's like the monotony of just like, your feet on pavement, you get bored so fast. And I know we spoke about this, so I know you're going to talk about like that monotony of just like, oh, like I just, you hit 2 miles, you're like, am I done yet? Um, and then like my strength training, actually, I killed myself by getting a 44-pound kettlebell a few months ago, but now it's actually getting easy to lift that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like a 44-pound kettlebell was not fun that first month and a half, 2 months. But now I'm like, oh, I can do certain workouts that I couldn't do before. I also started implementing more steel mace training because I feel like the strength and conditioning training we have, I think this is my third round doing it again. So it's actually easier. Like some days are easier than others, but I'm like, okay, I should implement something else on top of this, like a finisher. And I'll just do like a grueling 15, 20-minute steel mace workout, just like 4 workouts multiple times until for time and just keep doing them. Um, so that's been really nice with the training. Now, regarding nutrition, and Jesse, you can probably, I don't know if you may know about this, but funny enough, the last week I had a beer for the first time in months. I was just like, Karina and I are exploring the neighborhood. We ran across a beer garden, a German beer garden, which I love beer gardens. I've always have. I love German beer occasionally, not all the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a nice cold one. You know what I mean? And Karina and I are playing like board games, drinking beer. It was date night. Beautiful. And I was expecting the next day to be hard. I was just like, this is gonna just be a really hard run. Yeah, I drank last night. My heart rate is probably not up to par. My recovery is pretty crap. But actually, that was like the easiest run I ever had to do. Like easiest. It was so easy. I felt like I could have did more. I don't know what it was. I was like, did the beer give me something that I didn't have before? Like I don't know. So
But
Jesse,
I would only say my only thought process would be two things. A, You had a good time the night before, right? You let loose a little bit. You got out of your rigid sort of day-to-day monotony as we're talking about. So you probably, that probably made you feel really good, made you have a good night's rest. Um, and yeah, I think energy holds over whatever the material is. And it's funny you actually mentioned that because I was listening to a Wim Hof podcast, I
Mm.
believe yesterday, and uh, he's talking about how like this one guy, he saw him, like his friend saw him drinking a beer, and he's like, you don't think that's gonna like mess you up? Like you don't think the beer is gonna mess up your performance or everything you have going on, blah blah blah. And he's like uh I'm in complete control. Like there's no thing that can mess with me. He's like, if I wanted to right now, I can go and do a horse stance for 3 hours. If anyone's ever seen a horse stance or knows or doesn't know what a horse stance is, just Google it real quick and you know what we're talking about. um, and the guy was like, okay. And then he goes and he's like, all right, I'll do the horse dance. But first, you have to serve me a beer. And so the guy was like, he ran, he got him a beer, he drank the beer and did a horse dance for 3 hours. So yeah, I think there's a level of um, just mind over matter. You had a good time, you felt really great, and that gave you some sort of like renewed energy to go out there and do what you need to do. And then also, I think from a food standpoint, I think there's also something to be said that yeah, like if you it might also be a sign, and I know we've talked about this before. If that was one of your best runs ever, then you might need to pick up your caloric intake because um, what that tells me is that you gave your body some more calories, some more energy, right? For we're not talking about the quality of the energy, but just energy in general. You gave your body some more energy, and you went out and ran. That does not mean that I think you should go and drink beers, but what it does mean is that maybe you need to um, consume a little bit more carbohydrates in your diet, um, or if you're opposed to carbs, to consume more just general food in your diet, so you can go back to feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I know when it comes to nutrition, and since you're talking about that, I feel like I've definitely been upping it up. I haven't been fasting as long, so I used to do like regularly. We talked about this in the beginning, like 16/8 fast, 24, or like 24-hour full day fast. But I don't think that's possible anymore with the amount of work, and that's not even including like your actual day to day, like work stuff, like you at work using your brain, which takes up about 30% of your calories day to day, as well as moving around. Like you go into the store to pick up some stuff, you going to do this, you going to do that. And just all that movement throughout the day. I'm like, I definitely need more caloric intake. I need more meat. I need more carbs. I've been upping up my potato game, my plantains. You know, I'm Puerto Rican, so I really love my freaking plantains. I've been upping up, my protein intake. I've been probably drinking my protein shake like every day now. Before it used to just be on strength and conditioning days, but now it's just like, no, I need that scoop. You know what I mean? I need
So
that scoop. I need that scoop today. And like I'm definitely overreaching. Like I'm definitely going over the 2,300 caloric like calories. I can
fine.
totally feel that. You know what I mean? And I've been, eating much more carbs, whether that's potatoes, rice, just clean carbs, no bread, none of that bullshit. Occasionally on cheat days, I'll have like a sandwich with the bread. You know what I mean? Go to In-N-Out and get a burger or something. We have an In-N-Out like 5 minutes away, and that's like my favorite joint. But like that's okay every now and then, as long as like I take the right supplements. I just bought some beef organ supplements, but I'm also still taking the seed probiotic prebiotics formula.
Poop.
Um,
People on your poop.
oh yeah, it's been freaking fantastic, man. Once or twice a day, depending on what I eat, and I can totally tell. Like if I'm gonna eat it, like out twice one day, like last Friday, for instance, I know that I'm probably gonna go twice. My body is like, release the toxins. So that's been great. And I've been just like, just like eating clean, but not, as clean as, I wouldn't say as clean, but not as heavy on the carnivore. If anything, I'm like, my body's craving more carbs than anything else, which is really interesting. But yeah, go
And
ahead.
I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure, and I know people have done it. Like you can find great success doing carnivore and doing keto and being an athlete. I think it's 100% possible. So I don't think it's a hard, like, I don't want anyone to construe what we're saying as like to be an athlete, you must eat carbs. Like it really just depends on where you're at. And I think there's a level of ease. Like if we're just being honest, there's a level of ease when it comes to, okay, well, if and financially, financially supportive, because if I was to just consume most of my calories from fat and protein, that bill would be, pretty stacked. Um, and so there's the financial, but then there's also and we never lead with the financial because you can always, your food is your number one priority, I think, in life. Your health is your number one priority in life. And so um, invest what you must to find the success you need there. But I think from another standpoint, it's like, yeah, it's easy. And depending on what you have sensitivities to. So like I said, I've done, I did that really intense blood panel, and you know, I don't have any strong sensitivities to root vegetables. So when I'm eating potatoes and stuff like that, like it's fine. When I'm eating any root vegetables at all, like I know that my body doesn't have a negative reaction to that, and so that's what I stick to. Because I know my body is okay with it and can handle it. And yeah, I train a fuck ton. And so it's good to go. So, but I think like if I was where I was at before, where I wasn't running 4 times a week, doing, upwards of 15 miles a week, if I wasn't strength training, upwards of 4 times a week now, I would I be eating the way I'm eating right now? Probably not. I'd probably go back to fasting, 18 to 20 hours a day. I'd probably go back to having a more carnivore-ish diet. But now it's like that's not what I found to support me. What I found to support me is, yeah, having a little bit more balanced macro profile. And it sounds like that's the same truth for you too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like I always go back to like genetics, like what did our ancestors eat? And because I'm from Puerto Rico, so I'm from the islands, I'm from the Caribbean. So like what grows out there? We have vegetables, we have fruit. So I think for my body, like that really works for my genetics, versus, maybe someone who grew up in like you. I feel like for Russia, like, or, just Eastern European countries are very cold. So root vegetables are one, and then like heavy on the meat and heavy on the fats. But I don't know, like obviously you still consume your own carbohydrates, but I think potatoes would probably be like your number one food, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to that point, like something I, you know, it didn't show up as a sensitivity on my profile, but Boomer, did say like, hey, you still kind of want to avoid grains,
Mm.
not just gluten, but all grains in general. They're not necessarily the best options for you, but they're tasty and they're easy and they're made in 2 seconds. Um, and so for a long part of our training, I've been still eating rice and oats, especially oats in the morning with some banana and some fucking milk. Woo! It's delicious. But
You
I've
put me on
recently,
that overnight oats thing, man. Whew,
yeah,
delicious.
overnight
So
delicious.
good.
I've recently decided all right, well, let's cook this up a notch. I cut out the rice and started eating potatoes and squash and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then shortly after that, I cut out the oats, and now I just have a protein shake in the morning. Um, and I'm good to go. So yeah, most of my diet is literally just potatoes, steak, protein shakes, and bananas. That's like the majority,
Damn.
and like some greens here and there. But that's
Well,
the majority.
I'm still eating like, a big part of my plate is my protein fat. Like I post it on
Yeah.
Instagram. So if you're on the Instagram, I usually post I'll have two fillets of salmon instead of just the one serving that they talk about. Or I'll have, we'll have chicken drumsticks. I'll have like six of those motherfuckers. Like it's just what I crave. And I haven't felt full because I do that intuitive eating, and it's taken me a long time to figure out what that is for my body. I don't get that nasty like full feeling. The number one feeling I hate the most is that nasty, like I ate too much, I'm so full. I actually listen to my body and be like, this is it. This is like the maximum that I can fit right now. If I still feel hungry in 15, 20 minutes, I'll go grab, a quick snack, a few berries or something, and just pop them in, and I'll be fine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, intuitive eating, like, really, really helps, but it does take a while to know. And I know you just did a podcast with Nikita talking about like, emotional eating and like your own experience with that. So, folks want to listen more deeply, and you've talked about it here on the podcast in the past, so they can, check previous episodes or check that Nikita podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, intuitive eating is like has been a saving grace because I hate counting calories. you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I did want to step into mindset because I know you had an experience over the last week and a half that was really hard on you mentally. So you want to talk about that day, bro?
Well, I wouldn't say it was like really hard, but it
Okay.
was definitely challenging, in the sense that it was challenging, but it was also just the sign of like, oh man, we're now entering a new part in our training where it's just the next level. It's just the next level of mental fortitude that needs to be applied. Because there was a day where I had to do 6 miles. Um, and I had done 6 miles before by accident, just because I got lost. But this was the first time that like I actually had to do 6 miles. It was pretty late in the evening. I did not want to do it at all. I was pretty beat up and tired, um, and um, I was like, well, gotta go do it. Like there's nothing. I don't have an option. I just have to go do it. And it's really interesting. I heard uh, there was just this amazing nugget that I heard recently that was like, wow, I never even realized how often this happens. But you know who Lex Friedman is? He's been on the Joe
Of course,
Rogan
he's been
podcast.
on Joe Rogan podcast multiple times. It's like a
Yeah,
mathematician or something.
yes, yes, he's a scientist. He makes robots and shit.
Yeah.
Um, and he was on. So he had an episode interviewing Joe Rogan, and so obviously, I wanted to listen to that. And they were. I actually don't remember now. I don't remember if it was Lex speaking it on Joe's, or Lex speaking it interviewing Joe, but it doesn't matter. But basically, they were talking about the training that Lex has been doing with David Goggins, where he's doing some ungodly amount of like push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups, and I think for a month, plus like running some crazy amount every day. But whatever it is, he's just doing like a ridiculous amount of body weight training, more than like is healthy for a person to do. But he's not doing it for health. He's doing it to put his mind through the grinder. And one of the insights he had mentioned, which I was like, oh shit, like that happens to me too, which is like, he's like, there'll be times where I'm training, and my mind will literally just start talking about all the reasons I'm a failure. It's like my mind will literally just start talking about like, oh, like you shouldn't, it'll start in from like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this training, to like, who the fuck do you think you are to be doing this training, to like, who the fuck do you think you are to be a scientist? Who the fuck do you think you are to be on to have a podcast? Like it'll just start like breaking down his entire life while he's in the grinder. And I've noticed that's the thing that happens for me too, where if I'm training, it doesn't just have to be training; it can be work too. But if I'm really pushing myself in something to get better at, and I'm being consistent, I think it's I think it's called like ego backlash actually, which is like my ego, which wants to stay in homeostasis, is like, whoa, this is a different pattern than we're used to, buddy. This isn't what we do. You don't do these things. This isn't who you are. So let me just remind you of all the things you're not, so we don't have to continue doing this.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and so that's something that I noticed that evening, which was like, oh, like, man, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you gotta go to bed. Like, you gotta, you know, like, you don't got the time today to make this happen. You gotta get out of here, or what about your joints? Like, your joints are gonna hurt, or this is gonna feel bad, or like, you're gonna go to bed late, or you're gonna eat late, you're gonna, um, do you really think you're gonna be able to keep this up? Like, all these fucking thoughts are happening. And then obviously I go out and I'm trying to convince myself all right, like, all right, a mile in, I'm gonna feel pretty good. I get to a mile, I'm like, I don't feel good. Like, I don't want to be doing this. I'm like, all right, 3 miles in, like 3 miles in, I'm gonna feel pretty good. I get to 3 miles, I'm like, I don't want to be doing this right now. And then, and it was funny because I was listening to a podcast, and the podcast was pretty interesting at first, but then it got boring. And I was like, I'm gonna just keep listening to this. Like, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna keep this. I was like, there's nothing I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna pretend. I'm not gonna switch to music. I'm not gonna switch to podcast. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm like, everything sucks right now, and I'm just gonna let it suck. And so literally, it was like every mile, every half mile, I was just like, all right, once you finish, you're going to be so elated that you just got it done. And for that moment of happiness, all this suckage has to happen right now. So just suck. And that was the other thing. And I think this is important for as we're training for the actual race, is like pacing, because it's easy to, run at a solid, steady pace when you're only doing 3 miles or 2 miles, right? Because it's like, oh, this isn't going to be that long. I don't have anywhere to go. I'll be in and out here in 20-30 minutes. But if you're doing an hour-long run, you want to get that shit done. And so, but at the same time, you have to realize, like, well, you have to make sure you have good pacing while you're running. So even though because if you push hard right now, it's not going to last you 4 or 5 miles in while you have another 2 or so miles to go. So yeah, you're going to have to run this motherfucker slow, or slower than you'd like, if you'd want to stay consistent all the way throughout. And so, yeah, it was just a mental warfare at that moment. And I guess mental warfare is kind of hyperbolic. Like, it's just me running 6 miles. It's really not that big of a deal. But I remember I came back home and I was beat. I still needed to stretch. There were so many things still after that needed to get done. But boy, was I happy that I got it done. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Like, our mileage is going to continue to pick up. We're going to continue to there's going to be days where 6 miles is just irregular. 6 miles is just going to be
not even your long day.
It's not even gonna be a long day. It's gonna be a regular Tuesday. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So that was my experience with that, for sure.
I get it, man. And you bring up something kind of funny, because when I run the track, because I have a track now nearby, so if I do 3 miles or less, I just run it on the track. When I do my 4 mile days, then I'll run like around the neighborhood, and kind of, it's fun because you get to explore a new place. But doing it on a track, or if you're doing the similar trail, it gets boring really fast. So I
Mhm.
can only imagine, like, if you're running the same trail, like when I'm getting my 3 miles in and you're just doing the same circle over and over and over again, it requires a level of your mind to be like, hey, this is okay. Like, yeah, you want some novelty, you want to see a new house or a new tree or whatever the case may be. Nope, I'm seeing the same thing and the same people, because I'll be running around and there's people also running, and I'm like, I have to make sure I steer clear from them because the 6 feet stuff and all that stuff rules that they have. And I don't run with a mask. Sorry, folks, running with a mask is not smart. I tried it; it was not a good time. I've talked about it on the podcast. Please don't run with a mask. Just stay far away from people. That's it. But like I'll do that and whatever, and that's the only thing that'll kind of like skip my beat. Like, okay, but um it's funny because you think about like your challenge and like you getting over these challenges are very, it like comes from, for me, like you saying that, it's like, damn, it reminds me of when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager, or even my early 20s. There was so many times I would just like, whether I'll be in the gym or whatever, and I would just stop. I would listen to my mind and be like, this hurts, and I put that in
Mhm.
quotations because usually you can keep going even if it hurts just a little bit. I'm not dying. You know what I mean? And like being able to push beyond, which is why I'm enjoying this training. I haven't ran a 6 mile day yet because you're like I think you're 2 weeks ahead of me, or a week ahead of me. So when I get there, I'm just curious to see what that might turn into. But mentally, I'm ready for it. I'm reading a great book about Stoicism, Lives of the Stoics by Ryan Holiday. And there were like two Stoics who were really big into fitness. One of them was a sprinter. He was like a sprinter runner. His training was grueling. He would run back and forth, think about like a stadium, 100 times just to train. So imagine sprinting from one side of the stadium to the other. That was a regular Tuesday for him
A
because he was
hundred
training
times.
part of, because their Olympics back in the day were like way more intense. Like, they
A
didn't
hundred.
have all the 100 times, bro. When they said that in the book, I was blown away at
That's
that level.
ridiculous.
Yeah, you're moving beyond like what you is even capable of the human body, like to think about it. Then there was this other Stoic who's one of the one of, you can call him like a founding father of the Stoics. Um, Chrysippus, I think he's probably one of my favorites so far. But like, this man would do, not only would he do hard labor, which requires certain kinds of fitness levels, he would do hard labor. He would still be part of the school of the Stoics, right? And do teaching and learning and all these things. And he would still find time to train. It's like, what? You already do hard labor, you're doing your mental labor, and you're still going out there for your fitness, like to take care of your body, because he believed that having a strong body was part of having a strong mind. Like he had this belief in both of these worlds. And he was also one of the most, he's basically what his ideas created the stoicism that we see today, a lot of his ideas that he brought in. So you think of
Yeah.
guys like that, you're like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? And it's like, how can I show up that way no matter what, right? So I don't know. I love reading about people like this that just show these levels of fitness. With that, and we talk about these people often, David Goggins, Cameron Haynes, and all these guys. It's just like
Yeah.
they never look for the easy way. They always look for the way that is challenging because they know, like, it's like they smile at it and they're like, this is gonna be a good time, even though it's not gonna be a good time, but mentally they're saying it's gonna be a good time. And I love it.
Yeah, it fucks with me a lot actually. Like now that you're
Mm,
bringing it up, it fucks with me a lot because I'm always thinking like, damn, how much am I leaving on the table? Like
mm,
how often am I just excusing my lack of vigor, my lack of energy, my lack of will, my lack of excitement for life? How much of that is leaving what's possible on the table? Because it's true, like you hear about these people, and we have, like you said, we have our modern day giants as well, but then you think about all these people back in the day who, with less technology, with less things available, with more danger and risk afforded to them, they were able to pull off amazing feats. And so it definitely it's something that I feel like I struggle with on a daily basis.
Same
It's like
here,
like
man.
yeah. Like when 6 miles is difficult, I'm like, why? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because I know it's not. I know it's not actually difficult, you know, but why am I going through this mental drama about
Mm,
this? Like everything I just explained to you, why am I even worrying about 6 miles when for someone else it's not even a thought process, you know what I mean? And I know that comes with time, that comes with like day in, day out, you know, building, sharpening that sword, which is a very hard sword to sharpen, you know, when you're not born in that world. You know, if you're not born into a world where you just grew up in that type of intensity all the time,
mm-hmm.
which also makes me think like, I really wonder, you know, do we like are our athletes today compensated by compensating with the advancements in technology and research in comparison to athletes, you know, like you're saying, back in those days who didn't have all these advances, but had this such a deep connection to themselves and to the world around them, and who just knew how to suffer at such an early age that they were able to push way past beyond, you know, any past beyond what people would have thought were possible for people at the time. And, you know, Wim, like I said, Wim has been a recent inspiration for me because it's like that motherfucker doesn't do anything. The motherfucker, he's not even like that fit. You know, like when you look at him, you don't see a really fit
Right.
guy. He doesn't do any crazy supplement, at least to my knowledge. He doesn't do any crazy supplementation. He doesn't um, do, you know, he's not like just out there grinding on, you know, training for a marathon or going to the gym. This motherfucker just breathes and goes into cold ass water a lot. And he's just learned how to navigate suffering to such a degree that you put him in any situation and he realizes that whatever the physical challenges is not greater than my ability to control how I feel about it. He has
Mm,
such control over his body that it doesn't matter for him. He can drink a beer and do a horse dance for 3 hours because he's tapped into this part of himself where he's just so aligned and able to control his emotions and control the way he feels about something, that it does not matter what the task is. And it's like that's available to us. You know, we can go
right.
there. It's just like, what are we? How much are we willing to constantly go step into that to find success?
And what I love about Wim, and you say he's a huge inspiration to you, and I've heard him so many times, and I've always said I'm gonna get his book, and I never like read his book, but his podcast, just his energy and how he
Mhm.
shows up, there's something to that. There's something to that, like he's playing this game of life as if it's actually a game, like he's having a good time, and you can tell,
Mhm.
like it's not like bullshit. They people come on and they put a different mask on. He's like that all the time. Like
Yeah.
any podcast you see him on, he's the same person over and over again. And that's very inspiring because like you'll hear like I think there was someone recently on a bunch of podcasts. I think it was Matthew McConaughey, and you can see the
Mhm.
differences between he changes the way he is in a sense depending on the podcast he's on. So it's cool because he has this adaptability, this chameleon effect. But I think what makes Wim like like a OG, you can say, is that he brings this fun and this excitement and this like even though he has such a crazy past, his wife dying and all these like crazy like dark parts that happen to him, like these dark things that happen to him, he's living his life to the fullest. I think he's having just a grand old time, which I don't know. I when I see people like David Goggins, I think they're just having a good time. They're just like, this is fun. This is a good time. Jocko, on the other hand, like sometimes I'm like, are you having a good time, man? But he's always so serious. But I love him too. Like there's merit to that, but I think there's something to that, like having fun, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to tap into that unless you have that in your mind already. Like, fuck this. This is just life. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna die anyway. I might as well just have a grand old time while I'm at it. You know what I mean? Even with the training.
Well, that, you know, I know we got to wrap, but that's something for people to think about as well. Because if they're anything like me or you know, we like regimentation. We like
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, knowing that like this food serves us, this food doesn't serve us. This
Right.
quality of water serves us, this quality of water doesn't. We need to be in bed by this time. We need to be up by this time. We need to work at this time. We need to get off technology at this time. Like we like that, you know? Um, but I think there's something beyond that. And I don't know. I'm not there yet where I think I can access it. Like I see it, but I'm not in a place where I can embody it. But I think there's a place, we can talk about this on the next episode. I think there's a place where um, if your belief system is strong enough and you're mindful enough and you're still aware of what's important and what actually is really beneficial, but I think there's a place beyond the really strict regimentation as far as like doing this and this and this, where you could still do everything you need to do and more and still have tons of energy if the intention of where you're coming from is like I'm fucking full blast on life from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. I'm super grateful for everything that's happening and I'm ready to take this day on. If you were able to lead with that, what would be possible? And I'm not I'm not there. I don't know what that's like in experience, but there are days where if I do wake up and I only had 4 or 5 hours of sleep, but it's like fuck it. Like today I'm full on, I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go make some shit happen. Um, and it's an awesome day and I don't feel tired and I just I feel good to go. So part of you wants to start moving a little bit away from the really, really strict sort of this is good, this is bad, and more towards like, where is the energy coming from? And am I, no matter what circumstances I'm putting myself in, can I still show up and fucking rock out? And
Right.
it's definitely an interesting idea.
I hope, brother.
Oh,
I hope. Well, this has been, I hope everyone got this update and appreciated this conversation. I think it gives us also fuel for what to talk about next time. And now, for the next episode, there'll be some traveling happening. So me and Jesse will be recording probably in person. That's going to be freaking awesome again to be able to do that and just see how that changes, right? Like traveling, what that looks like. You still have to do the training. How are you going to do it? Like, and this is like top of mind right now. But obviously, I don't want to talk about it until it's actually being done or it has been done and how that may change some things. So
yeah.
get ready for that, folks.
Well, when you're going to be out here, we're definitely going to put ourselves through some fire while we have the opportunity to train together. So
Right.
I look forward to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yes. And, follow us on IG to get it. You'll see
Well,
it all
sweet
on
man.
IG stories.
This has been awesome. This has been an awesome conversation, brother.
Yes, as always, brother. So, with that, we're gonna hop off. Thank you, folks. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, share this podcast with a friend, so they can see, this inspiration that you and I bring. You inspire me, Jesse. I hope that it's the
Yes.
same on the other end, and I hope that we inspire these folks listening. So,
Yes. Much love, everybody. Thank you for
much
listening.
love.
Tune in next time.
Peace.